Well, the 2024 class is all but wrapped up, but 2025 recruiting efforts, they're well underway for the Ducks. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Got my guy Max Torres here to talk some recruiting today. LinkedIn Jobs is our official recruiting sponsor here at the Locked On Podcast Network. He's at mtorresports on Twitter, covering the Ducks for Fan Nation at Sports Illustrated. You can also check him out online. He's everywhere. He is the man, the myth, the legend. Max, let's hop right into 2025 as I stumble my way through this opening to today's show. It is time to think about 2025 on the recruiting front. Even though National Signing Day is 6 days away, this is the modern world of college football, and Oregon only has one outstanding name really in the class of 2024. And, Gatlin Bear, we'll get to him in just a moment, but the 2025 efforts, they're off to a strong start.
They certainly are, Spencer. The 2025 class is officially on the clock. That was what I titled one of my recent episodes, and it's kind of exciting, right? Because it's a new batch of recruits. A lot of these guys I kind of have a little bit of a feel for, but a majority of them, I would say, and not in an unprepared way, but in an exciting way, I don't necessarily know a whole lot about. So it's you got to find new sources, new connections. New camps to go to. There's going to be 7-on-7 tournaments I'm going to be at, so I'll hopefully get to see a lot of these guys. But Oregon's in a really good spot as far as just where they're at, starting things off. They only have 4 verbal commitments right now, but that's good enough for the number 12 class nationally, according to the 247 Sports rankings. And they already have their signal caller, which is big, and Achilles Smith Jr., and then they already have 2 of the best receivers in the country in Dallas Wilson and Adrian Wilson. So now we kind of have to turn the page like we were talking about, see where the priorities are and see who some of the big names are, with a lot of big visits happening this weekend and this month.
Yeah, the other commit for the Ducks in the 2025 cycle right now is 247 Sports 3-star Chavez Thompson, interior offensive lineman from Melbourne, Florida. So Oregon, once again, putting on full display the geographical reach that they've got with this staff. And Dan Lanning, when he's had a full recruiting cycle with, the staff has had a little bit of change. Kenny Dillingham for Will Stein and Matt Pallage for Chris Hampton, Adrian Clem for Alik Terry. And, now, of course, Coach Meat has moved on and they've made some promotions from within. I think that this staff, once again, is set up to recruit at a top 10, 15 level.
Yeah, that should definitely be the expectation. I wouldn't even really, I think Oregon's at a spot where I don't even think top 10, top 15 should be a consideration. Firmly within the top 10, I think, is certainly the expectation now for Oregon, if not really closer to the top 5. I think that is truly where Dan Lanning has taken this program. Certainly with the caliber of talent they're able to attract and the hot start they're already off to. It might take a little bit for the fans to realize it, but there is already a tremendous amount of momentum in the 25 class.
There is, and the transfer portal gets a lot of attention, rightfully so. You can make an instant impact on your roster. You can change your roster, alter position groups, do that all in one offseason, not have to always play a long developmental game. But still, high school recruiting does matter a great deal. You're not going to see the big schools like Alabama and Georgia and everybody like that just disregard high school recruiting because the transfer portal is there. There's a team that only focuses on the transfer portal. They're naming the Colorado Buffaloes, and that's certainly not where Oregon is trying to be. And again, you can improve, you can get better, but still the core, the foundation of your roster is built through the high school recruiting ranks and guys that, maybe take a year or two to develop into full-time players. And I think that Oregon, having recruited well over the last couple of cycles, sets them up for success going forward, in addition to the guys who are the cherries on top, or maybe even the headline starters sometimes with regards to the roster going forward. So as you look at, where Oregon sits going into 2025, I think I'm with you after you said it. That Oregon's expectation should be to recruit at a top 10 level. They're off to a strong start, but who are some of the names that Oregon fans should be aware of right now?
Some of those names, some of them are even coming to campus this weekend, Spencer. I'll start with one of the biggest targets out west and kind of right in my backyard here in Southern California, and that's Nasir Wyatt out of Santa Ana Mater Dei. Ducks have really built an expanding pipeline to one of the best programs in the country after signing Aiden Breland out of Mater Dei this past cycle, as well as Jack Ressler. And now they're looking to kind of try to clean house again. I mean, they were involved with a number of other guys in that 24 class. Xavier Brown, a corner, an All-American who ended up at Alabama, and Nate Frazier, a running back, also an All-American. He ended up at Georgia. So they're really doing a good job as far as just prioritizing some of these guys. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, just getting a feel for Oregon's priorities, and then they have to become the guys that I follow. So Nasir Wyatt's going to be in town this weekend. He was actually originally scheduled to go to Florida, but then Dan Lanning came by the school, and now he's heading to Eugene for the weekend. Just kind of Lanning communicated how urgent it is that they get him up to campus for another visit. I believe he hasn't been on campus since the fall. I want to say it was the USC game, but the things are going to go dead here for a majority of February. So recruits aren't going to be taking as many visits, and then the coaches aren't going to be taking as many visits on the road themselves. So Nasir Wyatt is one of the best in the country. He did kind of say that he hit the reset button after all the mini coaching carousel moves that came from the Saban retirement, but I think Oregon is still firmly the team to beat there. I put my prediction in for Oregon to land him in the fall, and nothing has happened since then to lead me to believe otherwise. But along with Nasir Wyatt, let's just stay at Mater Dei for a second. Why don't we? Jordan Davison, he is one of the very best running backs in the country, certainly the number one running back on the West Coast. It's Oregon and Texas. Those are the schools that I think you hear most frequently mentioned. He's also going to be taking the trip up this weekend to Eugene, and I know that Oregon would really like to sign Davison, especially after missing out on Frazier last cycle, but he's a special talent, and I think that the Ducks have a really good shot when you see Carlos Lachlan in the work that he's done. So not to just focus on Southern California, though, but I mean, I'll just keep going if you don't stop me. So we'll just start there.
Well, I do have one question for you, because trust me, we got plenty of time to roll through other names and such, but you're down there in Southern California, a place where Oregon, really under Mario Cristobal, started to establish a pipeline where that used to be USC-dominated territory. That's just not the case. What's kind of the status of Oregon's brand and awareness and just kind of recruiting prowess down there in SoCal?
It's as strong as it's ever been. That's for sure. I mean, when I was talking to Wyatt, he was talking about, hey, it's kind of in the backyard. Eugene is. It's not too far. It's an easy flight. My parents can get up there. And I think really, if you look at what we've seen in the past couple of years, Spencer, Oregon has been the most successful program if you're just comparing them with the other two LA programs in USC and UCLA. So I think USC is trying to figure things out right now. And now you have these Chip Kelly rumors after we thought he was going to be fired, and then he wasn't going to be fired, and then now he might want to leave anyway. It is really crazy, but I mean,
yeah, he interviewed, by the way, just so everyone's aware, he interviewed and got to a second round reportedly with the Las Vegas Raiders for their offensive coordinator position.
Yeah, and then now I think he's getting linked to the Commanders opening as well, I
Yep.
want to say. So it's, you're seeing the coaching carousel in the NFL level having an effect on the college landscape, obviously. But Oregon is as hot as any team in the country right now, I think, when it comes to recruiting. Their stock is through the roof. UCLA is kind of a question mark. I think a lot of people don't really expect them to be that competitive in the Big Ten. USC is making all the right moves, I think, to try to turn things around, putting a bigger emphasis on high school recruiting, having a complete reshuffling almost of that defensive staff after Alex Grinch got let go as the defensive coordinator. But Oregon's brand, to answer your question, Spencer, it is as strong as it's ever been, and it is thriving down here in Southern California.
And there are lots of names to know, and we'll get to those names right after we get to FanDuel, of course. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best bets, the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or two or 3, or like LeBron said when he joined the Heatles, or 5, or 6, not 7, not 8. Yeah, they won 2, by the way. Anyway, just thought I'd slip that in. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of just $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Rolling along here with my guy, Max Torres. Check him out at mtorresports on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let's dive back into the names, and one that, everyone does know for 2025, because, the reason I wanted to get the ball rolling on this stuff is Oregon just has one potential recruit to land for 2024, and it's Gatlin Bair, the 5-star wide receiver. It's down to Oregon and Michigan. Oregon's in a good spot because Jim Harbaugh left to the NFL. But that's even not a 2024 recruit. That's a 2026 recruit, essentially, because he's going to take a 2-year LDS mission. So I think that for the Ducks, from a recruiting standpoint and for the fans, it is time to focus on 2025. And the one name in that class that everybody does know is Achilles Smith Jr., who is 6'5". You just don't see a lot of quarterbacks like that. Now, Ty Thompson was also 6'5", so that's not the be-all, end-all, of course. But what's kind of the latest surrounding Achilles Smith Jr., and is Oregon still, got him on the lock?
I believe they still have him on the lock. I asked him if any more schools were still recruiting him, and it didn't really seem like there was anything new to report there. And I think you probably feel, if you're an Oregon fan, that you have a little bit more security there, or certainty with him being a Duck legacy. But I think that they are really trying to build this class around him, seeing that he is a legacy. He's not the highest rated recruit they have, but for all intents and purposes, I think he is the face of this class. And they already have a couple of really good wide receivers in the fold with Dallas Wilson and Adrian Wilson, who I mentioned. Dallas Wilson's out of Tampa, Florida, and he's going to be on campus this weekend. And Adrian Wilson is out of the state of Texas. A lot of other schools are still involved there, but as of right now, he's solid with Oregon. Long way to go before the 2025 signing day, right? But Achilles Smith, things are solid. I think he's just been working on bulking up this offseason. He told me that he measured in at 225 pounds when he was in Eugene last weekend for his visit, which I think is really important, Spencer, because he's trying to really develop that dual threat skill set. And I think he's a really gifted runner. It's just a matter of maintaining that athleticism, agility, quickness, speed while you're adding that weight. And I think that that's definitely a positive development if you're an Oregon fan, seeing that your quarterback of the future is putting that on. So not super eventful with Achilles Smith Jr., but he did tell me he's working on recruiting some pretty big names. I think the biggest one is probably Decorian Moore, the number 1 wide receiver in the country for 25 out of Duncanville, Texas, currently verbally committed to LSU. And I've been talking to some sources that tell me that they're still trying really hard to get him on campus for a visit. So I think that recruitment's got a long way to go, even though he's verbally committed to LSU. And then you have Fahim Delaney, the number 1 safety in the country out of Olney, Maryland. He was on campus recently, and this is another guy that Achilles Smith Jr. said he was working to recruit, as well as DJ Pickett, a big-time DB out of Florida, who has been rumored to be maybe making it out to Eugene this weekend. So those are some of the other names to know here, and that Achilles Smith Jr. talked to me about.
Yeah, I think Delaney's a guy that interests me, getting the top safety in a class. I know Oregon fans might, the ones that follow recruiting, have some element of PTSD from the Bowen situation in Oklahoma to Oregon to Notre Dame and everything like that. But the safety room that Oregon has going into 2024, I think Kobe Savage is certainly going to be a starter. But if memory serves, he's got just 1 year of eligibility left. And then you have some other guys that are coming into that room, like Aaron Flowers, for instance, has picked up a lot of buzz. I wonder if he plays at all as a true freshman. You've also got Tyler Turner and Cody DeCambra from the 2023 cycle. That'll be redshirt freshmen next season in the safety room. But I think that that's a position where Oregon certainly is going to have, a little bit more of a reset, perhaps, than some other spots. Whereas defensive line from 2024 to 2025, I almost think Oregon can back off. I don't think they will, just to be clear. This is Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy. They're going to recruit high-level defensive linemen as best they can. However, it is not as great of a need at this point in time barring just a barrage of transfers from that group because of how well they've recruited over the last couple of cycles. So when I hear Zaheem Delaney's name being tied to Oregon out there, that's a name that definitely interests me because, Oregon has been searching for better production out of their safeties. I think they got it this year, but I think there's still another gear they can take defensively from that group.
I definitely would think so. The defensive linemen are going to be interesting to watch in this cycle, Spencer, just because of how the talent is spread out geographically. Like those bodies that you saw the Ducks get this past cycle, Jericho Johnson, Aiden Breland, even Elijah Rushing, that there's not as many of those this cycle if you're just looking at some of those top guys that we've been able to identify so far early on. But I think the safety group is going to be one that's really interesting to monitor, especially because I've been hearing more and more lately about Chris Hampton. I know you've been a big fan of his, even dating back to when he joined the staff. So we're really starting to see him, not that he wasn't already, working his tail off, but I feel like even more so lean into his recruiting prowess, after he was promoted to defensive backs coach to go along with his co-defensive coordinator title. And Fahim Delaney is just about as big of a name as you'll find. There is another big name coming to campus this weekend that I told you about before we recorded, and that's Trey McNutt. He is an athlete / safety out of Cleveland area, Shaker Heights High School, top 30. He's number 36 nationally, the number 2 safety in the country, according to the 247 Sports Composite. So just crazy, crazy talent flooding to Eugene. You have the number 1 safety one weekend in Delaney, and then now you have McNutt coming this weekend. So they're doing absolutely everything they can to get as much talent they can on campus this weekend before things go dead.
Yeah, and the class so far, has got a quarterback, an offensive lineman, and 2 receivers. It's going to take shape beyond that. But you made this point earlier that, it's kind of built around Achilles Smith Jr., and he's going after the kid from Duncanville. Remind me his name.
DeCorian Moore.
Yeah, DeCorian Moore, like that Duncanville, by the way, powerhouse high school in the state of Texas. Big time high school. I don't know if it's quite on the modern day level within the state of Texas, but it's certainly in that realm of, hey, this is one of the elite high schools in the entire state. And I think that having Smith Jr. already committed just speaks volumes about, what this staff is capable of doing on the trail, because that's a really highly rated recruit. And Oregon's got all these other quarterbacks, right? Like they decided that, Michael Van Buren was no longer going, or I don't know which side that came from, to be fair. But, they lost a 4-star quarterback commit, and yet their quarterback room is going, solidly 4 deep into next year. Novosad got some run in the bowl game. Dante Moore has started games at the Power 5 level. Dylan Gabriel will be the starter. And then you have Luke Moga coming in. And so the fact that Achilles Smith Jr., as you mentioned, is not, majorly entertaining, at least publicly, other options in other schools, the legacy component helps. But I think that speaks volumes about the way this staff has been recruiting at, every single position. Because we think of Dan Lanning and we think of the defensive recruiting, rightfully so. But the staff is really, really good up and down.
It absolutely is. And we're getting a little bit more clarity as far as some of the other positions. Like that's kind of the point that I'm at right now is like have a good feel for the running backs, the receivers, the tight ends that the Ducks are going after. Deshaun Brame is another one to watch, big time tight end out of Kansas. He's been rumored to maybe come to Oregon this weekend. I haven't been able to confirm that one myself, but keep an eye out for him. But we're seeing these priorities kind of come to the surface a little bit more now that Oregon is firmly on to the 2025 class. And I think the big thing to watch here is 2 things, Spencer. One is, does Oregon want to add another quarterback in 2025 in addition to Achilles Smith Jr.? I don't know. I don't think it's a need necessarily because you have multiple years of eligibility left with Dante Moore. I think he's obviously looking like your long-term guy after Gabriel, but who knows? We'll have to see there. And then the other one that I wanted to mention was just how Oregon chooses to stagger this momentum, because I think that the timing of these announcements and the commitments really, really are incredibly strategic. You look at Jabbar Muhammad's commitment in conjunction with Dan Lanning announcing the spring game and the big time hoops game that they had last weekend. I think that that's all pretty important, and I think that they could go on a run before too long, especially when you consider the fact that Gatlin Bear is looking to announce his decision soon. I put my prediction in for him this week. So if you can couple a Bears commitment with maybe a couple other ones, you're looking at a really good little run that Oregon could potentially be putting together.
Big time targets, already some solid recruits that have committed to the Ducks in the 2025 cycle. All in all, recruiting, as has been the case under Dan Lanning and company, off to a good start and headed in the right direction. Max Torres is at MTorres Sports on X, formerly known as Twitter, the lead editor and publisher of Ducks Digest, host of the Ducks Dish podcast. Max, my man, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me on, Spencer. Appreciate it.
Everything you need to know about Oregon's game last night against USC. That's coming up next. So Oregon got the win last night over USC. The stretch they have in February does not provide an opportunity for a lot of high-quality wins. Oregon is 2-4 in quad one games this year, which is not great when you're trying to build an at-large resume. So what that means, and Oregon can still absolutely build a resume to get into the tournament, is they have to win games last night in the fashion in which they did. Would have been great if when they had a 16-point lead, it had remained there, but still Oregon beats USC in Los Angeles 78-69 at the Galen Center. So for Oregon going forward, they're 7-3, tied for first with Arizona in the Pac-12. The Wildcats, of course, have the head-to-head, and Oregon will see them again in Tucson later this year. Oregon's 15-6 overall on the season. Their 7 games in the month of February are against teams that, for the most part, outside of Washington State, are at the bottom half of the Pac-12. And you have to beat up on those teams. And frankly, they need to beat Washington State again because that's a decently quality win because they're a borderline NCAA tournament team themselves with the way they've played this year, and they've got to win over Arizona. So Oregon went into Los Angeles last night and played well from the start. Came out of the gates. Shelstad was hooping. He ended the game with 20 points. Now, he was hot early and then found some shots late and was really cold in the middle. The good news is even without Keyshawn Bartholomew, Oregon was able to get production from a variety of players. All 5 starters were in double figures. Cario Oquendo hit some timely shots and had some really, really tough finishes in the lane. Jermaine Couisnard, he is so on and off from 3. He either swishes it or airballs it. There's not really a lot of in between, or he gets big, massive bounces off the rim. But that guy really is the heart and soul of this team, especially at the defensive end. And that's how Oregon won this game. So over the course of this season, Oregon has, uncharacteristically for a Dana Altman team, struggled on the defensive end. With N'Faly Dante back, it hasn't gotten as much, it hasn't improved as much as you would like to have seen so far. This was a better performance. But allowing 39 points in the first half was not great, especially since USC wasn't hitting an overly high number of threes. They were like 5 of 14, which is, you'd like to be better from a perimeter defense standpoint. But I think that for Oregon going forward, their offense, even without Keyshawn Bartholomew, and Nate Biddle didn't play last night either, he can be an offensive weapon. They've got the depth. As long as there are 2 bigs that can play and Mo Diawara can be the third between Kwame Evans Jr. and N'Faly Dante, Nate Biddle, as long as 2 of those guys are playing, Oregon can do well on the glass. They're capable of more defensively. But really, these guys just know how to score. And that's something that hasn't always been the case with Dana Altman teams. And, Shelstad certainly has to learn how to play well against the higher caliber opponents, but these are really good opportunities for him because these are teams that are not as strong as the Arizonas or Utahs or Colorados of the world. And he's going to have to play well in those games, and I think he's capable of doing so. But Shelstad had a little bit of a slide. He hit a freshman wall, and that's a completely natural thing to do. So now he needs an opportunity to get his rhythm back, and this game was certainly that. And he looked like the Jackson Shelstad of the early part of this season. He's not the only guy out there making a difference. He's far from it, but he is certainly, when he's going, the driving point of the offense. He had 6 assists in this game as well. That's a really big number for college basketball. Typically, the leaders on a team in assists per game are often around 3 to 4, whereas in the NBA, those numbers can be anywhere in the 8 to 10 range. They play more games, and they tend to play better basketball as well. So I think that the way Oregon played in that game against USC is their NCAA tournament selves. Will we see that every game from here on out? I don't know. Teams tend to be inconsistent and up and down as the season goes along. But for the Ducks, They play UCLA on Saturday. That's up next. The Bruins have been playing much better basketball. Much better basketball over the last couple of weeks. Still a game that Oregon has got to be able to win. Then next week, the Washington schools come to town, and Oregon scraped by with 2 wins in Seattle and Pullman. When they played those games, it was close. Both times came down to the wire, and Oregon got those wins, which are huge for their resume right now, having road wins, especially over Washington State. Can't lose any games at home. Period, point blank, end of story. But the rest of the opponents that they play in the month of February are Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford. That's where good. The Beavs are in there twice, and then you have Cal, and you have Stanford, and then you've got the 2 Washington schools. And for Oregon to go in that stretch, I've said this before, and they're off to the good start, of course, with the win over USC. 6-1 is what they need. 6-1 is what they need. Now it's a 6-game, a 6-game mini season is where Oregon is at. And they need to go 5-1 in those games, minimum, right? If they were to go 6-0, that'd be great. I don't know that I can expect that when there are road games in there, but certainly Oregon's capable of going 7-0. It'd be great if they did. However, I think if they just can go 5-1 in their next 6 games, they've got the win against USC, then they will be in good shape. Where would that stumble come? Probably Washington or Washington State, frankly, at home. But I think if they, or honestly, Oregon State on the road, that's a dangerous team in Corvallis. Their record isn't very good, but they beat Arizona, and Oregon did not. So anything could happen in college basketball there. So those would be the games I'd say are the most likely ones for them to drop. But this is a really good start. Saturday needs to go well, and if they're 2-0 there, then just get on to the next one. And just keep racking up the wins, because Oregon's 15-6 right now. If they go 5-1 in their next 6 games, which they're more than capable of doing, sitting at 20-7 with a month of March that has got opportunities for quality wins, and then the Pac-12 tournament as well in Las Vegas, I think that would be a pretty good place for Oregon to be as they try to build an at-large resume. Now, look, you can always go win the Pac-12 tournament. It'll be wide open. I truly believe that. But UCLA, who won on Thursday, is 10-11. Washington's, they look strong at the start of the year, but they've kind of fallen off. They're sitting at 12-9. Washington State is good. They're also 15-6. But if Oregon can go in their next 6 games, 5-1, I'm going to want to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, my math was off. They have 7 games left in the month of February. It's UCLA, Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, Oregon State again. Go 6-1 in those games. Oregon could be 20-7 with 3 games in March, which would be Arizona on the road, Colorado at home, Utah at home. If Oregon goes 6-1 in their next 7 and wins at least 1, but preferably 2 of those games, and 2 of the 3 are at home against Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. The Mountain Schools are at Matthew Knight Arena, and then Arizona is on the road. If you win 1 of those games, plus a 6-1 stretch here, Oregon would be sitting at, let me do some quick math, 21-7. They'd be 22-9 going into the Pac-12 tournament. That's a pretty good place to be, and I think Oregon could do it. So that's where things stand. We'll see how things go on Monday, and I'll talk about that game. As always, if you have any questions about basketball, football, or anything else, let me know. YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlin CFB or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions wide open. You can also get priority access over in the flock at SUBTEXT, which is in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Appreciate everybody. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, go Ducks.